our face, you know. Good afternoon, everybody. We're delighted here. We're at the second day of the Global Earth Repair Conference, and I'm not even tired. And I woke up feeling great because I'm so inspired to be around all these people here today that are doing a better job for the planet. My father was doing good jobs when he was alive on the planet, and I think that we're all doing. What's the name of those people in Northern California? They have the symposium every year. The architects, the pioneers.
Oh yes,
the pioneers.
yes.
Yeah.
I've never dealt with them before. I'm aware.
Yeah, but they're pretty
Yeah.
special people. I always wanted
Yes,
my dad to go there
Mm.
because he was working with lightweight concrete and the earth, you know.
Mm.
And so we're very blessed today to have Mr. Goreau here. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us his prime directive for the planet, why you're here, what's floating your boat, and give us an update on how you're feeling about things on your journey.
Well, my name is Tom Goreau. Tom Goreau, and I'm a biogeochemist. It means I work in biology, geology, and chemistry. I try to understand how the atmosphere affects life and vice versa, to put it simply.
How the atmosphere affects life.
Atmosphere, how the oceans and the soil, all of them. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just interested in the overall system interactions, particularly the carbon
Oceans,
and nitrogen.
soils, and atmosphere, everybody.
Yeah.
So get ready to have a little bit of a lesson and to find out where we're at with Mr. Goreau.
Well, the thing is, we're in a situation of excess CO2 in the atmosphere from fossil fuels causing runaway global warming, whose impact we have not yet felt, basically.
Runaway global warming.
Runaway global warming. We're on the route to basically melting the ice caps and getting something like 80 meters of sea level rise.
So California, Malibu, goodbye bye.
Well, yes. I mean, ultimately, for instance, if we get that kind of sea level rise, the San Joaquin Valley will be an inland sea. Yes.
Arizona will be on the ocean.
Oh,
Not that bad.
It's maybe high enough. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at a contour map.
But in the same time, the fault will break and then
Well,
we'll have
this is not going to happen very quickly because, as I say, the response time is very slow. When we put CO2 into the atmosphere today, the full effect of warming we won't feel for several thousand years on the Earth because the built-in time delay, which is caused by the mixing of the ocean. The ocean holds almost all the heat in the climate system. And it takes about 1,500 years to turn over until the deep sea warms up. We won't feel the full effect of heating of the
So
surface.
the ocean cools our planet?
Well, the thing is, the whole
Keeps it temperate?
Well, the thing is, most of the ocean's just a bit above freezing. The deep water has been chilled by the poles, and it gets dense and it sinks. And through the last 3 million years, we've had a lot of ice ages, and that's filled the ocean with cold water. So we have to warm that up. I mean, imagine a situation where you have a house, you've got your heat downstairs turned full blast in a cold environment, but all your windows upstairs are open.
Right.
Okay, well what's happened is the heat's going to flow up there until the upstairs warms up, you're not going to feel warm downstairs.
Heat rises.
Heat rises, that's right, yeah. But I mean, so the ocean's sort of similar but upside down in a sense because the heat's coming from the top down rather from the bottom.
Because there's no light at the bottom. It's
Well, yeah, so
colder.
the sunlight is hitting the surface, and the sunlight warms it up, and that warms the surface, and then it slowly mixes. But I say that there's all that cold water that has to be warmed. That's where the heat's disappearing to. That's why we're not feeling the effects of global warming yet, but it will last for thousands of years. And that's what politicians don't seem to understand, that what we've done now will have impacts for a long time.
So what's the emergency?
Well, the emergency is that ultimately we're going to have billions of people losing their homes. We're going to flood all the low-lying islands, and we're going to kill all the coral reefs due to global warming.
And is there a reverse point, or are we beyond tipping?
Well, that's not an...
It's a difficult question to answer.
Well, it's a difficult question because there's not one tipping point. There are many, many tipping points that don't all have the same temperature range. Corals are the most vulnerable of all ecosystems to high temperature because they've been pushed above their upper temperature limit since the 80s repeatedly and more. So they're the first to be really affected by climate change. But every other ecosystem has its point too. It's just corals are the most vulnerable to increased temperature.
And what is the importance? Tell the audience, say we're on Global Earth TV next week, next month, we take this episode. Teach everybody what and how valuable and how important to the to humans and to the ocean and to the ecosystem what the canary is and how important coral is to living on the planet. I mean, if we lose coral, then what?
Well, coral reefs only occupy about 1/10 of 1% of the area of the ocean.
Correct.
So it's a tiny area, but they are oases in a desert because they are vastly more productive, they have vastly higher biodiversity than the open ocean. So they're the richest parts of the sea. I mean, for instance, although they only occupy...
You mean wherever there's coral, there's more fauna, there's more
absolutely.
animals?
Absolutely.
So the coral, does the coral have chlorophyll or does the coral itself? I thought it was a bone structure.
No, that's the skeleton is made of limestone rock that the coral grows, but the coral itself is a very thin layer of tissue on top of that. That grows a skeleton, but the tissue itself, the coral is an animal, but it has symbiotic algae living inside its tissue, so it's both plant and animal. So that's why it needs light. It lives off photosynthesis in large part.
So coral's not found in deep oceans?
Well, there are corals that live in deep oceans, but they don't have algae in them because the algae need light, so they're very different corals.
So the algae coral is the coral that we're worried about?
Yes, those are the tropical coral reefs, the shallow warm water reefs that everyone thinks of. There are also large reefs in the deep sea. They're very slow growing because they don't live off light, but they're much slow, but they're huge, and those are being destroyed almost as fast as the shallow water reefs because the deep sea trawling boats and oil and gas exploration is just, they take areas of reef that have taken thousands of years to grow and they smash them to pieces almost overnight. Like you imagine
what's the purpose? Why are they doing that? For oil pipelines?
Oil and gas, yes, so the footprint's limited, but the trawling, the bottom trawling, there's all kinds of things that people collect. They're living on the bottom, so they drag dredges across the bottom and destroy everything.
Who told them that that's okay?
Oh, it's permitted. I mean,
I mean,
they make money
who
from it.
invented? Is it all money? I mean, did somebody invent that device that trawls and then say, let's go do it and put it on the stock market?
Well, I mean, you've got to understand that people are very ready to develop technology to exploit things they haven't been able to exploit before. And the more they wipe out resources, they go to more sophisticated methods to exploit them. So it's sort of an arms race. So what we've done, to give an example, I mean, Jamaica, where I come from, the fishermen used to either drop lines and catch fish, or they used to lure fish traps. Now, the thing is, if the fish isn't hungry, it doesn't matter how much you wiggle the bait in front, he isn't going to eat it, and he can get away. So, he's hungry or he's not, you might catch him or you might not. But now what we're doing is we have teams of 20 people or 30 people, all with spear guns, diving at night with lights and sleeping, shooting the sleeping fish.
What about netting?
So the fish have no way to get away. Well, then there's the fine nets too. The people are using very fine nets, and those are not just catching the fish they want to eat, they're catching all the other species
The
they
plankton.
don't want. No, the plankton is usually small enough to pass through the nets, yes,
yeah.
but the juvenile fish of the other species get wiped out. And so, that's, what we've done is we've gone to more and more efficient technologies. The worst is that out in the open ocean, these people are using satellite maps to find where the temperatures vary, because they know the fish congregate in certain places where they're, warm waters, a barrier to cold water, so they know, and they're using sonar to identify the reef fish, so there's no place for the fish to hide anymore. Now we've developed this very efficient technology to catch fish wherever we possibly can, and to get all of them that we want, plus vast numbers that we don't want, and those we just throw away.
How about to do a global reform project through governments to start to ban that kind of stuff for the oceans and make that global school, house, and project to do that through the governments?
Well, this is sort of an interesting question. I mean, right now, governments are very exercised about, I forget the acronym, unregulated, unreported, and undermanaged fisheries. It's got some acronym for that. But basically, what that means pretty much is foreigners coming in and ripping off fishing your territorial waters, and that's happening, throughout the world.
But there's no laws, or the ones that are being broken and they're getting slapped just tinily, and while they kill the earth.
Well, I mean, there are some laws, but I mean, essentially, for instance, the fishing fleets of those countries that can afford to subsidize, and they go all over the world. Now, they will often pay countries for the rights to do it, but they underreport. They go in and they catch 100 tons of fish, and they report, say, 10 or 20. Okay, and that they're supposed to pay some sort of tax to the government for the rights to fish. But in fact, I mean, it's a
Because no one's policing it.
well, it's being policed, but ineffectively. I mean, money talks. I mean, to give an example, in West Africa, the fishermen are starving because the foreign fishing fleets are out there netting everything that these people used to get. So they're literally starving as a result. So but what people have gotten all exercise about, you see, again, they've developed the technology to be dangerously efficient, okay? The fish have no place to hide. And then what they're doing now is they're using satellite technology and transponders now to map the fish. Map the boats. Okay, and so now there's a big effort really to use these very sophisticated technologies to find ships that haven't paid you for the right to fish in your waters and bombing them out of the water, or hauling them in and throwing all their crew. And these are often very poor people and working under slave-like conditions often in these boats. And they throw them in jail, they dynamite the boat, and then the government says, "Oh wow, we'll stop these foreigners from stealing our fish." Now, and so they're moving that way very heavily. And the problem with that is, of course, that doesn't increase the number of fish in the sea. It just determines who rips them off. So, and there's basically people saying, well, we don't want foreigners to come and steal our fish. We'll steal them ourselves, so to speak. And so, I mean, from my point of view, it's the wrong strategy. We should be dealing with strategies to increase the number of fish that regenerate their habitats for juvenile and adult fish, and make sure they have healthy ecosystems so we can have more fish. But the methods that people are using are essentially punitive methods, or police state methods, if you will, to enforce laws where it's convenient to enforce, but they're ignoring the fundamental ecosystem. So I don't want to get involved in any state stuff. We want to grow ecosystems to make them richer.
So is our team preparing ourselves to help to make a change for these rules that are that we're up against right now, as our conscience and our knowledge knows that this is happening, without just talking to each other? Are we actually making progress?
Well, I mean, at this present time, I say that the whole global fisheries strategy has moved off on the wrong end. People are just investing in higher and higher tech for police measures against foreign fishing fleets. Find them, catch them, and find them or pull them up. It's not, in my view, I can understand why people are doing that, but it's not going to result in more fish, and that's what we need to do. So I think it's the wrong approach myself.
So coming back to the coral as
well, actually, let me add one more thing. I mean,
finish.
These blue water fishing fleets are heavily subsidized by governments. I mean, we're putting millions and billions of dollars into paying these people to go out and catch the last tuna wherever they can. And the subsistence fishermen, who are the ones who are producing food for themselves and their communities.
They're local.
They're local, they're very poor, and they get no financial help at all. They're the poorest people in their societies almost always. And so my view is very simply that we should end these, how can I say, criminal subsidies to the people who are destroying the resource. And we should invest in fishing communities to regenerate their fish's habitat and manage it so they have more. And I'd like to see all that money, these perverse subsidies, be applied to loans and assistance and training. What we found is, I work with subsistence fishermen all around the world. They're very poor and they're not educated, but they're smart people. And from the most part, they're aware that every fish they catch is destroying the opportunity for someone else to catch in the future, though they're stealing from the future in a sense. They know that, but they have to eat today, so they don't really have any choice. But they would like to be more productive and less destructive. They don't have the tools or the knowledge to do so. But once you explain things to them, they get it very quickly. Whether they have the resources to make the transition, that's another issue, because like a farmer switching from growing food for themselves to cash crops, they need to make a transition, they need financial help, and they need loans.
So through film, I say film is medicine. Why don't we film a series to teach these smaller fishermen to do better and to do right, and give it to them for free, or have their states or their locals purchase that so we can make it happen. But we can inspire them by telling them how to do better.
Yes, well, that's what we try to do. We work essentially without funding, but we try to work with communities and show them how to regenerate their
But not
reefs,
just
also
showing
the
them,
fish
do
habitat.
a film series that you can just drop off to everybody and have it subtitled in every language.
Well, it's a good idea.
Well, I'm a filmmaker, and,
Yes,
and I
yeah.
think in that
Yeah.
realm because I'm just realizing in my own projects how it's getting the word out even better and to more people. But in education, and when we have times in need to get generations to learn about how to not combat, but just to win, to get it back. Maybe a series, a 3-part series, a 2-part series, a 6-part series on first you do it here and then you go here and you get a lawyer here and you get that, and then it's done. And
Well,
yeah.
you're right. I mean, a series on sustainable fisheries is really needed.
Yeah.
Our view is that, my own personal view is we regenerate the habitat for the different species so we have more of them, and we do that and harvest them in a way that's sustainable. And that's possible, many different valuable products that come out of the sea. Lobsters, many different fish species, oysters, giant clams, etc., etc. We can grow all of those if we make the right habitat.
When you were a child, go back to childhood. Who inspired you, and what was your aha moment to be who you are today, to make a difference?
Well, my father was the first scientific diver in the world, and that's what I've done all my life, so that's what I do.
And did you dive with him? Did he teach
Yes,
you to
I've
dive?
been diving since I was 6 years old.
And with scuba?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, mostly snorkeling, but yes, with scuba too, yes, yeah, both. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic.
So that's what I grew up doing, and that's what I do because I have a unique background in that sense, and that's knowledge that has to be preserved.
Where can people find your information?
Our website is, I'm the president of the Global Coral Reef Alliance. That's a very small non-profit organization, volunteers, a member organization. And so our website is www.globalcoral.org. And we have a lot of stuff, but we're way behind because we do projects and we never have time to write them up.
Are you seeking volunteers and/or new people to come on board that are young and inspired?
Well, we get lots of young, inspired people coming to us, and unfortunately, I have to chase most of them away. I tell them, there's no money in this field. You can't survive doing this stuff. You should go into a field that has a future, not into a dying field like coral reefs. So I chase them away. I tell them, unless this is what you really want to do, despite the fact that you're going to suffer doing it, you should do something else. So we get lots of people wanting to volunteer, but the thing is, we don't really want a lot of, for the projects we do, the key thing is for the communities to learn how to restore their environments and manage it. When you come into a place with a whole bunch of outsiders, they come and do something, they have a good time, they feel they're helping, and they leave, the locals, it's just something landed on them, it's parachuted out from the sky. It's not their own project, and often they're not maintained. So really, for us, volunteers aren't really helpful. We need to train locals how to learn these things and not bring outsiders in to solve things for them. So that limits it. If we had large funded projects, we could use volunteers, but in fact we don't. Most of our projects are small.
And any final words?
Well, the final words is that we really are in a global climate change crisis. It's far worse than governments or even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change realizes for a lot of reasons. They've underestimated the long-term impacts. They've only considered short-term impacts, things that are going to continue for thousands of years. So we have a crisis, and we've got to reduce CO2 as fast as we can. And in my view, the place to put it is to increase the organic carbon in the soil, because that retains water, it retains nutrients, it makes the land more productive, it increases it builds up the water in the soil, but at the same time it cools the soil by transpiration of water from the plants to the atmosphere.
In repairing the soil and getting more carbon and goodies from cleaner soil for organic foods and for the climate change. What about hemp as a global plant right now? Does it clean the soil and help?
I couldn't say cleans the soil. I mean, it does have a fairly heavy nitrogen demand, I believe. But I mean, certainly it's one of the best plants for producing biomass, and it grows very fast. So it's sort of a super plant in the sense of producing carbon per unit area.
Right.
The hemp varieties produce fiber, but they also make very good biochar. Excellent biochar. So I think there's possibilities for carbon sequestration. Now, I mean, mind you, hemp advocates believe that's the only plant you need to grow, but in fact, you know, you need to grow whatever A grows the fastest and B has the most long-term benefits. So, you know, how you
Well,
get
hemp
that
does
to-
grow pretty fast. It's a weed.
Oh, it does,
And it's
it
pretty
does.
spectacular.
It does, and so
Yeah.
some people claim it's one of the best carbon sequestration plants there is. I can't answer that because there are a lot of other really great ones as well.
Right.
But they have other benefits.
And tell us one thing that you didn't know before you came here that you learned.
Ooh. Well, good question. I've heard so many great talks here, and I've missed, you know, lots of great talks here. So, I'm not sure I've learned all that much new because I'm pretty much aware of a lot of the stuff already.
You know what I've
But
learned?
yeah.
I've learned coming together and meeting people like you is imperative.
Well, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of interesting people here, no question, and you know, only managed to talk to a small portion of them.
Well, perfect. Thank you. Nice to meet you.